China's Spring Festival holidays are famous for delicious food, fireworks and TV galas, but also as the biggest human migration on Earth as people across China return home to reunite with their families. But this year, given new outbreaks of COVID-19 here in China, many people are choosing not to make the trek home to prevent unintentional spreading of the virus. The decision can be especially heartbreaking for people who work far from their families and only go home once a year. During the holiday, how are people coping with the homesickness and loneliness from social distancing and lockdowns? How can people maintain their mental health during these stressful times? Earlier, I talked to Zhang, Associate Director of C2 Education, an educational company, and David Moser, Associate Professor at Beijing Capital Normal University. So this year, many migrant workers have decided to stay in the cities where they work. Let's hear what they have to say.
During the pandemic, we're also worried about it. The factory has issued such an announcement to tell us how much money we can subsidize and how well we can arrange our life. We feel like we wanted to stay now.
I will not go home for Chinese New Year this year. Our restaurant will be opened on the New Year's Eve and also New Year's Day as well, so that people from other cities who are stranded can have a good dinner at that time.
I would usually go back home every year for a Spring Festival. I just wanted to get together with my families during the Spring Festival. But this year is the first time not going back. I'm actually feeling a little bit sad.
Professor Moser, so for these people, many of them are called migrant workers because they migrate between their home when they go to during Spring Festival and when they work, which are normally big cities far away from their home. So for these migrant workers not being able to go home this time during Spring Festival, what could possibly be the impact on them psychologically and economically?
Well, of course, we know these are people who are already under great economic and psychological and family stress. And we do know, psychologists, doctors, medical people know that stress is a very dangerous condition, especially psychological stress for workers who are economically challenged. And stress can bring on all sorts of changes in the body, which can be quite dangerous. It lowers your immune system. It can lower your brain function. It can cause greater susceptibility to all sorts of diseases, and also substance abuse, alcoholism, fatigue, loss of sleep, and all of these things can have a cascading effect, creating a disaster in their life as they become sick or dysfunctional and unable to work at a time when they need to be working the most. So it's a very sad situation and a very sort of a loop, a vicious circle of health and related stress.
Yeah. Mia, from the family's perspective, normally, for instance, there will be children who only get to see their family once a year, and this time, for many of these children, they won't be able to see their parents. What kind of feeling would that be?
Well, hopeless will be definitely the feeling popping up in their heads. For the most of the cases, I do have some students come to me, cry in my office. They said all their hope is just having, 1 week or 2 weeks meet with their parents, but now it's going to, be empty hope at this moment. And also, I think for the children, they're also stuck in home for almost a year, especially for the school. They're doing online sessions, so they already have a lot of stress to the grades drop, or the exams got canceled, or their teacher not been following up with them like they normally do. So they already have the stress they want to release, they want to talk about. They need the care from their parents, but now their parents, it's stuck away from the other city, which is very sadness.
Indeed, a very special, very difficult situation. So help us understand, David, exactly why there's been this sudden, let's say, tightening of measures preventing people from taking these trips, because every year around this time of year, we're seeing, as I said, the largest human migration on Earth, and it's a happy time. It has always been a happy time, and yet this year, all of a sudden, it seems that a happy time turned into a sad moment, and some international media have interpreted this as some kind of a crackdown. Of course, many Chinese would not agree with it, and yet it is true the measures are there which would literally prevent them from going home. But what are the reasons behind such strong measures at this moment?
Well, one of the ways that I try to make my foreign friends understand, and my family and friends back in the United States, is the sheer numbers. When Chinese population is the #1 problem. So this migration we're talking about, the number has been put around somewhat like 300 million, which is the entire population of the United States. So if you look at it that way, you see that the problems of infection and the potential risks are so enormous that the government really has no choice. Actually, most of the countries in the world are facing the same sort of problem, this trade-off between allowing people to have a reasonable sort of family winter holiday and the risk of further infection. China, I think, has done a very, very smart thing. They've done the right thing, which is to attack the disease very early on and sort of crush it down to a lower level where it can be managed with tracing. They don't want to lose that advantage, because that's the way that you can retain some measure of normalcy in the country. So I totally understand and I totally support what they're doing. They're taking extreme caution here, and maybe to some people overseas it looks like they're overdoing it, going overboard. But in a country of 1.4 billion people, you have to do something like that. Otherwise, the consequences are totally disastrous.
Mia, as you said, students who are personally affected by these measures, how do you see the measures? Because it is not easy, right? Even for us, for me, I won't be able to go back home to meet my parents this Spring Festival, just like last year, because of the importance of my job, and any potential risk of contracting this disease would bring not just myself, but my workplace, my colleagues, under some kind of risk and danger. So I won't be able to do that. But from your understanding, what is the rationale behind such very strict measures, and how do you see these measures are being communicated in a way that people can accept and can relate to?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I do have a lot of students saying they don't really understand why that could be a big deal. They just want to see their parents and their parents staying safe, why they still need to be quarantined. So for me, I think it's very important to control the virus at the beginning. And China, it's one of the examples that we did a great job before. And quarantine and then trying to stop the transportation as possible, it's what we can do, and it's the best effort.
What are some of the policies in place to help people cope with the situation? They can't go home, okay, but are there any compensations, for instance, or are there any psychological or any other kind of help to help them cope with the difficulties, and economically as well? David?
Yes, this is a very important component of this. If you want these economically disadvantaged people to participate and cooperate with this move, you've got to give them some incentive to do it. And that's only reasonable because they're sacrificing for us, for the entire country. So some of the things that have been proposed, of course, is that giving them extra, called hongbao, the extra money, the envelopes for the holiday, but also just some insurance, some vocational insurance guarantees, some additional stipends and money. Also, they're talking about paying for their phone calls, their long-distance phone bills, or their electric bills over the holiday. Of course, also you want to be able to give them some means to take care of the children if they have children, and all sorts of things, that advantages for allowing them to avoid the stress of not only not being able to see their relatives, but also the financial stress of suddenly having no income.
Mia, are there any specific help for the students or for the people that you know who might be migrant workers? Any specific help for them to get over this difficult period of time?
Yeah, definitely. There are many nonprofit organizations around us are actually providing counseling, peer supporting group, and even the psychologically counseling service is completely free for the students who they need. And it's very important for the students to know that there are still people who care about them, even though their parents is not around. And also the other thing is we're trying our best to advertising about what we're doing, what the service we can provide, try to prevent the stigmatizations about people thinking, oh, if you're seeking for help from a psychiatrist or from a counselor, it means you have a severe mental issue. We're trying to take that target out from the people. So when the beginning they feeling depressed, they can seeking help, they can express it to prevent the depression become a severe mental issue.
Recently, one piece of story that has gone viral in the Chinese social media is the criticism by some central government department officials on some local government measures which criticize them for lazy governance, meaning in order to make their life easy, they are making a kind of a big brush policy. Don't come home. If you need nuclear acid test that's valid for 7 days, they say make it 3 days. Or if they say stay at home and observe for a week, they say home quarantine for a week. They make it much more difficult on the individual citizens so that their job is easier, and that is being criticized. And that piece of news has gone viral on the social media here in China. Mia, what does that tell about the kind of awareness of the balance between quarantine and allowing reasonable movement and physical contact?
I think it's definitely hard for us right now to find a balance, especially under this uncertainty situation. Same thing for the government. I think it's so hard for them to identify each individual and then spend enough time and effort to knowing their situation. Are they good to go? Are they not good to go? They should leave, or what the test should be. So I think it's understandable in some level that's a big brush policy, like to clear out all the people and make sure everyone stay at home. It could be understandable, but also I understand how that could affect individual, especially when their family have the needs. For instance, they have the senior or the children they have to visit. So I think there's importance for us to find the balance in between. And also before we judging the news, we should knowing the detail of the backstory.
So indeed, let's all think a little bit more of them instead of us, of ourselves. Many thanks to Mia Zhang from C2 Education and David Moser from Beijing Capital Normal University.